Ladies and gents, welcome back to another video. In front of me here's a small package with two iPhones inside. The reason I bought this, I believe there's an iPhone 4 running iOS 4 and an iPhone 5 running iOS 5. Both super cool devices to have on their original versions of iOS. So let's get this opened up, see what kind of condition they're in, and talk a little bit about these cool old iPhones. All right, here we go. So here is the iPhone 4. The front is fairly scratched up, as you guys can probably see there in the light. The frame around the outside appears to be in nice condition. This is the CDMA model without a SIM card slot. The rear glass is actually in very nice condition, so I'd imagine this was kept in a case for most of its life. And we'll see if this thing has any power. And it does. We've got the old Apple logo right away. That's good to see. Let me go ahead and get this plugged in because I've noticed the iPhone 4 batteries are starting to fade with age as expected. All right, here's the iPhone 5. This one I'm a little more interested in. I have not been able to find as many of these on iOS 6. And I think the reason for that is because people kept these for much longer. The iPhone 5 was a very solid phone, and it had quite a bit of software support, at least back in the day. This is in the lovely black and slate color. Looks fantastic. It's in actually very nice condition here. The front, let's see if we can see any. There are a few scratches there, but overall very nice condition. Let's see if this thing has any power as well. And it is turning on. Once again, I'll go ahead and get this plugged in just in case it has low battery. All right, so the iPhone 4 has powered up, and it looks like iOS 4 because we've got the old style slide to unlock there. And definitely iOS 4, we do have the iPod icon, which is indicative of iOS 4. That was changed to the iPod in iOS 5. Another giveaway is the squared off toggle switch. Apple switched that to be round in iOS 5. Just to be sure, settings, general, and about is gonna show us that this is a 16 gigabyte iPhone 4 running iOS 4.2.8. Very nice to see here. Go ahead and turn battery percentage on, 93%. Props to the seller for making sure these are charged. On the other side here, we've got the iPhone 5. This is clearly iOS 6, and it looks fantastic. This was my very first iPhone when it launched in 2012. And having one of these on iOS 6 brings back a lot of memories, as I'm sure it does for some of you guys. So we'll head into settings, general, and about, and you can see 6.1.3. This is a 16 gigabyte iPhone 5. This one's in very nice condition, and I thought maybe I saw a bright spot on the display, but that might have just been a fingerprint. And I don't know if that's going to show up for you guys, but it looks like right there, right underneath my finger, there is some sort of mark on the display. Is that there when we turn it off? Not really. So that's a little bit interesting. Not sure what that's from, but that is, as far as I can tell, really the only defect here on this device. So these phones were actually sold side by side. When the iPhone 5 came out in 2012, the iPhone 4S dropped to the $99 slot, and the iPhone 4 came in at $0 with a 2-year contract here in the United States. Now, these phones don't look all that different, especially running these old versions of iOS, but they are dramatically different on the inside. Starting on the outside, however, we can see the iPhone 5 is a lot thinner and it's actually lighter. So even though this phone is taller with a larger display, larger battery, more powerful chip, it's actually lighter than the iPhone 4 and the 4S. Gone is the aluminum frame around the outside. At least I think this is aluminum. Maybe it's stainless steel. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's aluminum. And in was a different kind of frame here. It's kind of blended into the back of the iPhone, as you can see here. And that is what helped Apple make this phone so much thinner than the iPhone 4S that it replaced. The iPhone 5 is the thinnest iPhone up until the iPhone 6 launched a couple years later. And even to this day, this thing is very thin and very light. Although it is pretty small, this was Apple's first screen size upgrade. So we went from 3.5 inches here on the iPhone 4 up to 4 inches here diagonally on the iPhone 5. The iPhone 4 was Apple's last single-core processor. This had the A4 chip that was 800 megahertz single-core CPU-GPU combo, and the 4S would upgrade that to a dual-core A5, and the iPhone 5 would take that a step further with its dual-core A6, which was really ahead of its time, a very powerful and very capable processor. Definitely overkill for running iOS 6 here. This thing is incredibly smooth and it handles everything flawlessly. Now, one thing I want to try, I want to see if Siri is working. So let's go ahead and get connected to the Wi-Fi here. Keeping in mind Siri launched a year prior on the iPhone 4S, the iPhone 5 does Siri basically the same way, although it's probably a little bit faster. What were the score of yesterday's NBA basketball games?
Checking on NBA schedule. I found 12 NBA games for yesterday.
All right, there we go. So Siri is actually displaying the professional basketball games that were here in the United States as of yesterday. Very cool to see that it still works as it does. Quite a bit different than the Apple Intelligence we have now with iOS 18. So there's not a whole lot to say about both of these phones. They're very iconic and certainly nostalgic Apple iPhones here, especially with their original versions of iOS, which is becoming increasingly hard to find as people like myself purchase these for collections and to make videos for you guys, because I know you enjoy seeing these things. So we'll go ahead and get these unplugged. I do think they are plenty charged. The iPhone 4 is at 94%. Let's see here what the iPhone 5 is. Looks like it's close to 100, and it is right at 95. Now, one thing I love to do here is check out the old wallpapers. I think there's something pretty special about seeing some of these wallpapers, and I think there's actually going to be a lot of overlap here between iOS 4 and iOS 6. There are certainly some new ones here on iOS 6, and there were a couple removed. We don't have the globe anymore, and we also don't have whatever this is. Looks like a peacock feather. Although there were some that retained, like this wave here is a very classic one. And of course, we've got the classic iOS 4, which actually looks a bit different here. I think the iPhone 5 has a different display. So I don't know if that's going to show up for you guys, but the colors do look much more vibrant on the iPhone 5 here on the right side. So that is something to keep in mind as well. I do love this larger display. That was one thing that really blew me away with the iPhone 5 was not only how fast it was, but how nice this big display was. Battery life was also improved. We also got an improved 8 megapixel lens here on the rear. And in fact, I'm gonna show you guys the video quality on both of these iPhones. We're gonna start here with the iPhone 4. So I'm gonna go ahead and start recording video and we'll switch over to that. So here we are on the iPhone 4. I'm sure this is gonna look pretty bad and probably sound really bad as well. Here's my power bank down there. Love this thing, it is fantastic. And of course, here is our iPhone 5 ready to go for when we switch over to that recording. And that is actually what we're gonna do right now. We're gonna go from the iPhone 4 to the iPhone 5. And here we are on the iPhone 5. Here's the main setup. Hopefully this looks a little bit better than the iPhone 4. Maybe it's gonna sound better. I don't really know how the microphones are on either of these, but this is how the iPhone 5 looks and sounds here on iOS 6. Hopefully the quality is not too bad. We'll have to see side by side when I get this into Final Cut Pro. And it looks like it's struggling to focus here on the iPhone 4. If I tap to focus, that looks like it's much better. And that is gonna do it for our video test. We'll go ahead and switch back here to my main setup. All right, there you guys got to see and hear how the iPhone 4 sounds on iOS 4, how the iPhone 5 sounds on iOS 6. The iPhone 4 has a 5 megapixel lens here on the rear. The iPhone 5 has an 8 megapixel lens here. So pretty big jump in terms of camera quality as was expected back when these phones came out. The bump from generation to generation was much more significant than it is today. And upgrading from one year to the next brought a lot of new changes from hardware and software, something we don't really see as much anymore. So there you guys have it. I hope you've enjoyed this look here at two vintage iPhones running their original version of iOS here in 2024. Leave me some comments down below. Did you ever use an iPhone 4 or an iPhone 5 when they came out? Which of these is your favorite? That's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in another one of my videos.